Hey, it's Sonia, and welcome to the Marta podcast. Hi, and welcome to another Smarter Podcast episode. I am truly so hyped up for you to listen to an episode that's going to teach you how you can become a more authentic communicator, how you can embrace diverse strength, and how you can continuously accept and embrace the journey of self-discovery. I am truly so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Richard Etienne. He's an award-winning communications strategist, speaker, and founder of the Introvert space. Richard's career spans nearly 2 decades across the public, private, and third sectors, helping leaders and organizations unlock authentic communication, build inclusive cultures, and most of all, empower quiet talent. From serving as head of video production at 10 Downing Street under Prime Minister Theresa May to leading global communication strategies at Elsevier, Bacardi, and The Economist, Richard has consistently delivered impact at the highest levels, including the Civil Service Skilled People's Award, the Champions Award winner for the Department of Business and Trade, and Best Team of the Year by the Institute of Internal Communication. Beyond strategy, Richard is a passionate advocate for introverted professionals, coaching leaders worldwide in presence, storytelling, and well-being at work. He's also a BBC Radio London co-host, documentary filmmaker, and author of guides that help introverts thrive in environments often dominated by extroverted expectations. Richard brings a rare blend of creativity, cultural insight, and communication mastery. And today, we'll explore how his journey can inspire both leaders and rising professionals alike. Get ready. Richard Etienne, welcome on the Smarter Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. First off, I just want to start off with your journey because it's absolutely remarkable, from shaping communications at 10 Downing Street to award-winning filmmaking to founding the Introvert space. Where I wanted to start you off with, Richard, was if you can talk directly with a person listening right now, what would be the top 3 key takeaways if they'll stay with us until the very end of the conversation that they should look out for?
Okay, that's a great question. I love that. So for number one, I would say it's about the power of authentic communication. So how truly connecting with people, whether it's one-on-one or a global
Mm-hmm.
audience, is really the bedrock of impact. For number two, I would say embracing diverse strengths. And by that, I mean recognizing that leadership and contribution comes in many forms and appreciating especially the often underrepresented power of introverted qualities, which I'm sure we'll touch on later. And then finally, the continuous journey of self-discovery and reinvention, because if I was to look at my journey, my career has not been linear and most people's careers aren't linear. So finding purpose often involves exploring new paths and continuously just learning about ourselves.
You reminded me here of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he, just like decided to split his career in 3 completely different industries, from going to politics to bodybuilding to acting. It really just boils down to whatever it is your passion. If you're good at multiple things, if you can just find a way to monetize it, then you're gonna live an absolutely heck of a life. So with that, I want to take you into some skills that you've learned over the course of your expertise, particularly about coaching senior leaders and executives, and how one skill from that you can take away, you believe leaders must master to engage authentically in today's hyper-connected world.
It's something that you do actually really well, Sonia, and it's to master that deep, empathetic listening, because we're in a world where it's just full of constant noise, whether it's digital or
Yes.
otherwise, and information overload. So the ability to truly hear, understand, and then reflect on what is being said, I feel like that's so key. And I mean, not just waiting for your turn to speak, as we often see as well, but the reason for this is because it builds trust, it builds genuine engagement, and it's about creating what a lot of people call, in fact, one of your earlier guests mentioned psychological safety, where people feel valued enough to contribute.
While I was researching you before on your website, and I love this, so I'm just gonna stick it in here because I think it relates very good to the next question, is you've got this 3-sentence phrase that just instantly pops out that you film, I talk, and I write. And in the writing space particularly, you've got a lot of guides on introverts and how they can succeed, the survival kit for you and the survival guide. And you've also got an, I believe, self-recorded audiobook for one of them, which I particularly enjoyed. So if you go to richardetienne.co.uk, you can get your hands on them. And with that, I want to lead you into the world of misconceptions, because through the introvert space, your YouTube channel, where you post tips online on leadership and how you can thrive as an introvert in the workplace, I want to know more about what some common misconceptions are about introverts in leadership and how can organizations actually use them to better unlock their potential.
Yeah. Thanks for promoting my website as well and checking it out. I really appreciate
I
that.
really loved it. So
But for me, one of the most common misconceptions is that introverts are just not natural leaders, or they lack some sort of charisma or confidence or assertiveness. The number of times I've had people come up to me and say, "Wait, you can't be an introvert. How do you run masterclass,
good.
speak in front of hundreds of thousands of people?" And I have to explain, introversion has nothing to do with that. Personality, that's all to do with energy. It's simply how one gains or drains energy. Introverted leaders can do many wonderful things, such as building impactful relationships, because they often lead by example, by observing deeply and by empowering their teams rather than dominating them. And one of the ebooks that people can find on richardetienne.co.uk is something called Timmy, the toolkit for the inclusive management of introverts. And a couple of the things that it mentions in terms of being able to unlock the potential of introverts, I say that organizations need to, first of all, create quiet or space for quiet contributions. So this means offering various channels for feedback, more beyond than just shout outs in meetings, giving introverts an opportunity to provide written submissions, have smaller group discussions or dedicated thinking time. One of the least common events that can happen in an office for introverts are brainstorming sessions, where it literally is just a race to who can speak first, loudest, and get their ideas put across. So quiet space for contribution is quite key. And then second, just to also recognize their unique strengths. So actively valuing qualities such as thoughtful analysis, preparedness, and calm determination as powerful leaders.
I love that, especially because if you're familiar to Barry Posner's framework of the five principles of exemplary leadership, he touches upon how leaders aren't supposed to create a herd that you can follow, but to inspire them. And that really sets up anyone to be a leader, whether they're introverted or extroverted. Actually, some of those hard skills are less important, and those soft skills now are emerging as to be the ones that are predominantly really sought after in today's world full of AI. And with this, I want to move you on from the expertise you've learned to some of the lessons that you can conclude from what it is that you do. And especially since you've led communications for organizations diverse like Bacardi, The Economist, and Elsevier, what have you learned particular about building cultures where people feel truly included and heard?
So I've often been told, and many other people, I'm sure your listeners have been told, to bring your whole self to work as one of their policies for inclusion. But the thing about inclusion is it's not just a policy, it's actually a daily practice of intentional communication and empathy. What I've found crucially is that we need to understand, we need to actively listen. Again, not just to respond. So this means creating both formal and informal feedback loops where everyone, regardless of their role or communication style, feels safe to have their perspective heard. Also to champion diverse roles. So actively seeking out, elevating perspectives from different backgrounds. Again, roles, communication preferences, because this ensures that leadership decisions are informed by a wide array of insights. And then finally, that brings me to transparency and clarity. So when communications are clear, consistent, and explain the why behind the outcome or the decision, what it does, it builds trust, and it just helps everyone to feel more connected to the bigger picture, even if they don't always agree. We're going back to that 6 and 9 example. So yeah, these are principles of just listening and transparency, which I feel are vital, not just for existing employees, but also for those new to the organizations hoping to make their mark.
I want to take you back to something that you said, bring your whole selves to work. Richard, what's one way that I can do that starting tomorrow, or the person listening right now can implement it into their life starting tomorrow?
Don't apologize for what you say, or especially, in meetings. Do you know what number of times I've heard people say, sorry to interrupt, or even just to interject into, when someone's dominating the conversation. So often I've heard, sorry. Do not apologize. You have a right to be there like everyone else. Your insights, they are valuable and you have value. So please try not to apologize for your presence or what you say.
And I think we can turn this back to the extroverts listening to this right now that speak up when they really want to make a point that's not that relevant or pertinent to the current conversation. And to just remind them that sometimes listening or just having a moment of self awareness to see what's the ratio between the people sitting beside me and how much I have taught compared to them. And if I've listened to their perspectives is super, super important. What would be the top 3 skills that you wanna highlight, especially as, we're talking about this, that you would consider as remarkably important for someone new in organization, but willing to succeed?
I'm a curious person, so I really like that question. And my first
Really?
tip, I ask him why, right? When I was a
Mhm.
kid,
Yeah,
I probably asked about I probably asked why 5 times in a row just to get to the point, like the nucleus
yeah,
of the point. So for that
yeah.
first point, I would say curiosity, active learning. Please don't be afraid to ask why, just to understand the bigger picture. Because when we observe, absorb, and just seek the knowledge from various sources, it becomes more wide, more deeply understood, and easier to communicate with others as well. And the second one is proactive problem solving, even on a small scale. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you identify a small inefficiency or reoccurring challenge, then you
Mm,
can offer a thoughtful solution. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's more about demonstrating initiative can be quite powerful. And then finally, I would say building genuine relationships. So beyond your direct team, for example, connect with people across different departments, different levels. If you're in the office and your company's across several floors, do you find that you only go to your you just when you go in the elevator, you only press your floor, right? But yeah, just find ways to understand people's challenges and then you can contribute solutions because it's these networks that can be invaluable for support, for learning and future opportunities. So yeah, I feel like curiosity, problem solving, proactive problem solving, and then just building genuine relationships outside of your circle.
absolutely, because that actually makes you to force yourself to gain a new perspective on the matter or on the situation. And it just makes you a more well rounded person when you step into that conference or a meeting room. You're now going to have a broader, wider understanding of what it is that you're actually trying to tackle or solve in the weekly, let's say, meeting roundup. And so I want to ask you in particular about something practical that the listener can now go ahead and implement into their life, especially since you manage digital strategy for Commonwealth heads of government meeting, crafting content that generated over 1 billion social media impressions. What would you say, Richard, are the top 3 tips that when you create your social media strategy, especially as a young entrepreneur, without the advertising budgets behind are?
I would say, first of all, authentic storytelling. So stories are as old as time. And so they really help to move people's emotions, actions, and so forth. So as long as it's authentic, people will connect. They'll connect with your genuine story because human experiences are so commonplace. Social media taught or teaches us even that we are not the only people or person that feel certain things or have experienced certain things in our lives. So yeah, don't just sell, tell a story, first of all. Number two, I would say community engagement. So with this, it's not about just broadcasting. Interact, ask questions, respond to comments. If you can, host live Q&As. That way you can build a sense of belonging and connection to your brand, because making your audience feel heard and valued is so key in terms of just building a wider community for yourself and your brand. And then finally, I would say make sure that you are providing genuine value. So don't just try and sell, don't make it, how can I put it? Like, don't just try and sell so you can make money. We all have to earn a living. That's totally normal. But actually, can you focus on the value that your product or services is giving to the consumer? So it could be something education focused, inspirational, entertaining, provide solutions to a problem. I watch many YouTube videos to do a workout in the morning, so I don't have to go to the gym consistently. Just that person solving my problem, and I'm hoping that it pays for their mortgage. But just show up regularly, maintain a clear voice, and deliver on what your audience both expects and wants, needs.
I actually want to ask you now, how can we learn to grow? Because you're the co-host of the segment Trends at 12 with Eddie Nestor, MBE, on his weekday show that explores both social and political trends affecting London. And the station attracts 548,000 weekly listeners. How do we grow? You mentioned engaging now and hosting live Q&As and always interacting with your community, but can you put it down to like a science or a method we can apply?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I literally just came from that segment today. So thanks for that question. I would definitely say first to know your audience intimately. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand what matters to Londoners on this show, Trends at 12. So we try to find out about their daily lives, their concerns and interests. And so for podcasters, this would mean, deep research into your niche, understanding the pain points of your audience, their hopes, and even their humor. So yeah, really deeply understand your audience. And then secondly, I would say foster a sense of community and dialogue. So Eddie Nestor is a great master at making listeners feel like they're part of the conversation, like they're literally in the studio with him. So if there's a way to encourage listener interaction, I mentioned the live Q&As, but can people call in, send live messages? Obviously, they can tag you on socials, but if you can make your audience feel as if they are actively shaping the show, that's pretty cool. And then finally, master the art of concise, compelling storytelling. Now, you'll hear me say storytelling quite a bit today, because if someone was to ask me what my job title was, it would literally be chief storyteller. I love sharing stories of others and myself in all of the jobs that I do. And in radio, for example, every second counts. We're not allowed to leave dead air, as they call it, or silence. So, if we can learn to distill complex ideas into accessible, engaging narratives quickly, that would be awesome. So for podcasters, that means, tight editing, clear points, a compelling story arc for each episode. I mean, you do it really well, Sonia. You're really good at summarizing what's been said, getting people ready for the next. This is it, and this is how
Thank you. Yeah.
we keep it compelling for sure.
Great. We're going to talk about storytelling right now. Okay. So I want to take you back to your website, because when you say iFilm, you have this 2019 ID project that is absolutely brilliant. And I want to ask you, since you're so keen on the word and what it means, how can we use storytelling as a tool for business growth and employee engagement?
So I would say turn it into a solution that resonates emotionally. And an example of this is when I used to work for the Government Department of Business and Trade. I was the head of leadership communications there, which is an internal communication function. And our internal communications team wanted to promote a new benefits package. If you sign up
Yeah.
to this service, you can save money on trips to the cinema and blah, blah, blah. But that's not compelling, right? So what we did is sent one person from our team to go and use as many of the different services as possible.
Hmm.
And then he wrote a story saying, I saved £58.71 this week using this particular service. And here's how I did it. And he reviewed some of the popcorn at the cinema that he went to. He reviewed, the other events that he went to. It was a wonderful and compelling way to encourage the readers to actually use the service. So there was business growth in that respect, but it didn't feel like sales. It just didn't feel like another newsletter. It
Hmm.
didn't feel like something that everyone has seen before. And that type of approach builds connection, it builds loyalty, and yeah, just a bit of what's the word? Bit of difference. I was going to say differentiation. Gosh, that word's a tough one.
Difficult word. Yeah.
But yeah, a bit of uniqueness in a very crowded market.
Hmm.
And so there's that from a employee engagement perspective, as well as business growth, because it's important that to weave, as I said, these compelling narratives, whether it's for an audience of millions or for a single team. It's just about being consistent with that. And I've tried my best to use storytelling throughout my varied career, which involves a lot of moving around and having to
Hmm.
rethink my approach. But I love it. I enjoy it so much.
I want to go deeper in that. Can we?
Sure.
Yeah. The way you mentioned at the start that you didn't have a linear path to success, and your reply was continuous journey of self-discovery and that we always go through it. So now I want to link that to what advice would you give me per se if professionals are looking not to keep carrying on with their career, but pivot to their new passion?
My biggest piece of advice on that would be to focus on your transferable skills and your core values, not just your job titles. So I had a job for at 10 Downing Street, which was the official videographer for the Prime Minister. Now, while
Hmm.
that job title is kind of self-explanatory, it doesn't really say what I do. And what I did was, I was a visual promoter of her work, or I communicated her message to the world. Now
That
people want,
just is,
right?
yeah, it flips it around. It's like making me interested. Absolutely.
Exactly. So now you know that communication is one of my transferable skills or core values. And that is something that can be used across the piece. So whenever I pivoted, I wasn't just chasing a new role. I was looking for opportunities where I could apply my communication, my strategic thinking, leadership skills, storytelling skills, all in a new context. So, and then what's really nice is in parallel, you can just align it with your desire, things that interest you. So if there are particular sectors that you enjoy, my son's 15, I know his interest is in physical activity, sports. So he could be a doctor, but could be a physio for professional sports team. So that's how you can just keep those two things paralleled. So yeah, identify your core strengths, understand or define what your purpose is, what value you wish to bring, and then try to find a way to align it with your interest.
Richard, I'm going to play you around in the sense of time now. I'm going to take you into the future and then I'm going to take you back in time. All right. First off, let's take you to the future and looking ahead. What would be your biggest hope for how organizations will support their people in terms of the workplace culture?
Workplace culture, it changed a lot since COVID, hasn't it?
It did.
Yeah, I think in the future, we're definitely seeing the benefits of flexible work models. So I hope that we maintain that. So we're looking at not just where people work, but how they work and when they work, empowering that autonomy. Because when you give people the power or choice to work at the time that they are most, capable and just agile of mind and spirit, then you can get a lot more out of your team. So yeah, flexible work for sure. And links to that is a more proactive mental health and well-being support. Again, integrate that into the culture. Don't just have it as policies, but let's see that in action. And then I think personalized career developments. For that, I mean, moving beyond like generic training, because again, it's not one size fits all. People learn in different ways. Is there a way that we can, yeah, personalize that development approach for individual employees so that they have their own tailored path to success? And then finally, and crucially, I think embracing personality diversity. I can't not
Yeah.
say that, right? We all have a personality type, as unless a scientist or, tells me otherwise. So if we can create environments where introverts, extroverts, ambiverts, all the verts can thrive and contribute at their best and feel truly included, that's a future I hope to see for sure.
I love to live in that type of future as well. Let's take you back in time to when you were young, a little bit older than your son at 17. I'm currently that age. And this is a very special question because we're already diving into the traditions here at the Smarter Podcast. I've got three questions for you. This is the first one. What one piece of advice would you give yourself about your dream career if you could start all over again?
I would say embrace your unique strengths and stop trying to fit into a mold that isn't yours. So at that age, I did that. I was often trying to be louder, trying to be more outwardly confident and follow this perceived traditional way of being seen as successful when actually that wasn't me. If I really noticed my power, then, I would have definitely connected with a few people on a deeper level and on a more authentic level. I remember when parents' evening, my father used to, go with me, and you can imagine the scene in the gym with all the different tables, the different teachers meeting parents. And, I'd sit down in front of my teacher, and teacher would tell my father, "Oh, you're doing, wonderfully well. Here are his predicted grades, blah, blah, blah." And then they'll say, "But we notice, he's a bit quiet in class. He doesn't like to raise his hand, or, I notice he prefers to play alone rather than, in groups during, break, recess." And my father would look at the grades and say to the teacher, "Well, this all looks good to me. I don't actually see what the issue is. Maybe it's something that, you could perhaps change." And I mean, this is way before talking about personality types, So yeah, if we just embrace our unique strengths and don't try to fit in, then yeah, I wish I'd have done that.
You're scaring me off here with the predicted grades since next month, I'm applying to university and I'm about to get them. So fingers crossed here. But
Very true.
I want to take you back now to the second question here at the Smarter Podcast tradition, which is related to all things books. Particularly, what would be your top two picks that completely change your perspective through which you view life?
So the first one has to be Susan Cain's book, Quiet. That's the power of introverts in the world that can't stop talking. That was a book that I read at a time when I thought there was something wrong with me. And this is in my working life, working career. And yeah, when I read that book, it was a revelation. I realized I was part of a wonderfully large group of individuals called introverts. And according to Myers-Briggs, the personality data company, in 2022, their research showed that 56.8% of the working world identifies introverts. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So it definitely inspired me to create the introvert space, and
Hmm.
it fundamentally changed how I approach team dynamics, leadership, the idea of leadership, and then communication strategies. And the second book, it's quite an old book. It's The Alchemist, and it's a fiction book, and it's a tale of Santiago, who is a Spanish shepherd boy. He goes on a journey to the Egyptian pyramids, right, to get treasure, but only to find out, like, am I allowed to give them the ending there? But ultimately, it's an
Your
old.
Alexis is a famous one. So
Yeah, so we know, only to find out that his treasure's actually back home where his journey began. And I
spoiler
learned,
alert.
yeah, spoiler alert, right? So I learned that this is, often the wisdom that we gain in life is from the journey itself. And it helps to reveal that our treasure is actually, what talent is already within us.
I actually have it up here in
Come
my
on.
library, The Alchemist. Yeah, I love it. I read it. It completely changed my life while I was on a plane, actually. And the last question here on the Smart Podcast tradition is where I ask my last guest to leave a question for the next one. So this is the question left over for you, Richard. What are some practical techniques for creating conversational space without putting people on the spot?
About putting people on the spot. There you go. I just did it. Pause and reflect. So after you've made a point or discussion and it seems to be settling intentionally, just pause for a few seconds before moving
Yeah,
on. Is that silence, it might feel a little awkward to some people at first, but it's a natural opening for someone who needs
yeah.
a little bit more time to gather their thoughts, process. You could say something. Let's just take a moment to reflect on this before we move forward, or any initial thoughts from anyone else. Let's pause there. Second one, because we like to do threes. So the round robin. Now, what I mean by this is asking for thoughts from as many people as possible, again, before moving on. So you could say, I'd love to hear a quick thought from everyone on this, but look, no pressure if you don't have anything to add right now, because again, that gives quieter individuals the permission to speak, but without being singled out, or they could pass on just gracefully if they're not ready. And then for the last one, it's thinking about meetings then more than just the start and end time. So there's the pre-meeting prompt. Make sure you get your agendas. If you are the meeting chair, for example, get the agenda out early. I used to work with someone who said, no agenda, no attender. So give people time to reflect on what's coming so that they can gather their thoughts and opinions and be ready for the meeting. And then after the meeting has actually closed, feel free to let people know that they can still contact you afterwards if they have any further thoughts or reflections, ideas, etc., because that can be really effective. So pause, round robin, pre and post meeting prompts.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. And it actually can also make the listener pop up from that little device that we carry everywhere around with us and actually listen to what you have to say, because so often, as you said, in radio, every second counts. And so you have to fill up the time, or people might think there is an error. But actually, conversely, in a meeting or when there's a room full of people speaking at the same time, pausing, even if it's like, as we did, for 3 to 5 seconds, it can create that sense of something is different. What's going on here? I need to have my full attention. And with that, I want to finish the episode in the same way I started it. So, Richard, if you can talk directly with a person listening right now, what would your end message be in terms of you can be the driver of your own life?
I would say be curious. Be curious about the world. Be curious about different people, about new technologies. But most importantly, be curious about yourself. Understand your strengths, your weaknesses, what energizes you, what drains you, all of those wonderful things. And then you can build a career that allows you to operate from that place of just true authenticity.
Richard, Etienne, thank you so much for being on the Smarter podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Sonia. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making it this far into the Smarter Episode podcast, because you're telling me you want to become better at learning how to communicate your passion to find out a way to monetize it. And with that being said, why don't you double check that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel already, or wherever you listen and get your podcast from, so you can keep listening to wisdom and value from my guest that only keeps increasing and coming more at you every Monday. With that being said, I'm Sonia Marta. This was the Smarter Podcast. And if nobody told you this today, I want to be the first to tell you that I believe in you and your ability to create the life of your dreams. See you next Monday. Bye-bye.